All right, I checked in with our TA. We are mostly graded on the first assignment, so expect that back hopefully by today. He also posted a game jam at the end of the month as an announcement in our class. So if you'd like some experience designing games, there is a game jam being held, and you do not need any or much experience to join that. Good way to meet people, good way to get some practice ahead of. I'm assuming that most of you are interested in taking the next course. So that'd be a great way to get some experience ahead of doing it in class. We have the second 3 chapters of the book due on Sunday. I got that assignment up. Surprise, it's literally copied and pasted from the first assignment. And that will be the case for every one of these. Again, you can put your own spin on this. I'm just looking for critical analysis, thinking, and dissemination of your experience reading the book. Basically, what I would be able to see in person if you did this in class. All right, we have just a little bit more to go over regards to this before we do an in-class activity today. So we're going to get there relatively soon, and the rest of today should be, hopefully, a lot of fun. The people who are missing today, man, they're missing the good stuff. All right, so last time we talked about kind of a 4-step process that we can go through. We had analysis, design, implementation, and testing as a cycle that you can go through in game dev. That makes a lot of sense with regards to things like daily builds, getting feedback and incorporating that feedback as fast as possible into a product as you work toward kind of a minimum viable prototype, and then work from there toward building a complete game that you can fully release to the public. So we talked a lot about analysis. We're going into the details of design next. In game design, this is true in a lot of software, but it's especially true in game design, where the design a lot of the time is listening to people who play your game. This could be from their own verbal feedback or written feedback. It can also be from the data of your game. So it doesn't have to be audio listening. It can be listening to what the data is telling you. But basically, listen to the people who are actually playing your game, regardless of the state that it's in, because their feedback is something that you should consider. That does not mean that every single person's piece of feedback needs to be incorporated into your game in some way, shape, or form, but you can't make the changes that you don't know are the weaknesses in your approach based on the evidence given to you by your players. I like to think of it as very similar to being a professor in a classroom with a bunch of students. I can get feedback from each one of you about how this is going, but I can't incorporate absolutely everyone's experience into the class because I have to deliver one piece of content to all of you. So I have to find a way to optimize, given all of the feedback that I can get, what is the best that I can do to disseminate the best product that I can that works for as many people as possible, as well as possible. It's the same for you designing a game. You can't make everybody happy, but you can take in as much data as possible and then use that data to make informed decisions about the future of your game. So you should be thinking about the audience's experience as you go through each design phase in this cycle. When you get that feedback, even if it's something that you don't want to hear, especially if it's something that you don't want to hear, that's what makes for interesting feedback. If it is just, you're doing great, that doesn't change your development in any capacity. It's only when people push back against what you are doing or what you want to do that you would end up potentially incorporating that feedback into changing up what your game would have been. You can also listen to other developers if you're not working by yourself. And in part 2 of this class, you will be working with other people. Use the skills you developed in software engineering or figuring out how to work together on a larger scale project. If they disagree with you, listen to them. Their feedback is usually at least worth considering, or worth discussing in some way, shape, or form. You learn a lot about your own assumptions, about your own, I guess I can leave it with assumptions, when you listen to other people. You can adapt and learn. Listen to your client. If you're developing a game for someone, either as a job or as a contractor, then yeah, if someone's paying you to do something, it's probably wise to listen to them because they're the ones paying you. They're the ones who are going to be the word of mouth for what you eventually create for them. You would like them to continue paying you and not just stop paying you, and you would like them to hire you again because they had a good experience with you the first time. And finally, you want to listen to your game. Sometimes the game will tell you what it needs in terms of design and what limitations should be. There will be great ideas that you have that belong in a different game. Don't necessarily belong in this game or don't belong in this game right now. So don't try to force all of your good ideas to be in one product at the same time. They just don't fit into the current scope. But they're important ideas. They're worth taking notes of and saving for later. This could become another game. It could become an expansion to this game. Who knows? So we talked about listening to yourself is another important piece of this. Your gut feeling. There's a reason behind your gut feeling. Don't just go with your gut blindly, but it's something that hasn't been fleshed out in terms of a written idea. You could start to critically think about, what is this gut feeling? Why am I thinking this way? And of course, always prioritize your health. If you are finding yourself working too hard, no reason to pull all-nighters and stress yourself too much. Works for all classes. A well-rested, healthily dieted, fresh programmer will be more capable than someone who is on no sleep, poor diet. Yep. Listen to how you sound. If you're communicating with other people, just be aware of tone, be aware of how frustration is being let out. That can be the difference between a healthy working environment and a difficult working environment. Implementation. When you're implementing, you don't want to be stuck in the implementation process for very long. You want to minimize the time from design to completed product. So because of this, it's worth recognizing that for things that will change, especially that will change digitally, we're going to do an entire unit on prototyping. But just because you're making a digital game doesn't mean you need to digitize everything immediately. Think about, how much is this going to change between the conception of this idea and the final digital product? If the answer is it could change quite a bit, then it's worth trying to figure out, is there a way for me to test this idea without spending a bunch of implementation time? Can I emulate this on paper? Can I emulate this in some capacity that doesn't require as much work, implementing something that is going to change a lot in the near future? So you can use things like paper prototyping for your GUI elements. Rather than making a GUI, you can start to get feedback on a paper prototype of a menu system. You could scratch this out and then even give it to someone and say, all right, imagine you're playing a game and here is the option menu layout. If you were on this screen, how would you go do this idea? How would you go change the resolution? And you can make sure that the person says, I want to click on this button, and you replace that piece of paper with another piece of paper that is the sub-menu of your design for that. And you can get a very good sense of how intuitive your menu layout is just from that. The same works for a lot of anything in a user interface. When you do decide that you need to make a digital prototype for something, the focus should be on the player's interaction. So, most important aspect to test is the mechanics. The mechanics can't be tested on paper. It has to be through interacting with the control scheme in a digital game. So that's important. And then finally for testing. You might think that you know things about your game, but you don't know them at all until you or someone else plays your game. So you are biased in and of yourself. You know, you went through the design process, so you know everything about your game. You don't have a fresh approach coming from no information. So because of that, you know what your game is, you know what your game does, you know what the game should feel like from your own perspective, so you're more likely to feel that way when you play your game. You have practice with the controls and mechanics, either because you designed it based on something that you liked or you're familiar with, or because you've been playtesting it throughout development. So it's always worth handing that off to someone who has no experience with that and see how they interface with it. When people give you feedback, they will try not to hurt your feelings. Surprisingly, this isn't helpful. It's much better to provide real feedback, even if that real feedback is blunt, because it leads to the changes that need to happen in order to make your game better. As a designer, there are things you can do about that. You can prime people who are giving you feedback to give you real feedback. Please be blunt. Please tell me everything that is wrong with this. I want to know what your experience is like. As soon as you give them the experience to ream your game, the feedback that they give becomes much more real, much more actionable. So yes, set the stage for constructive criticism. Admit your game has flaws. Say, I know there's something wrong with this, but I can't quite pinpoint what it is. Can you help me with that? And that lets people, really opens the door for them to, they're helping you solve a problem. They're not criticizing you anymore. They're helping you by criticizing. And that's okay. Make sure that you take good notes. This could turn into a whole psychology class about how poor our memory is. We've all seen or had experiences with our memory malfunctioning. It's never as good as what you think. So take notes on things like, where did this feedback or this comment happen? What did the playtester actually say? What were their words, their exact words about that? You might take the idea of an emotional response. They struggled with something, but if their words told you exactly what they were struggling with and you lose sense of exactly what those words are, the eventual fix that you make might not be as good. What did the playtester mean by their words, even if they weren't communicating perfectly or clearly? Make a note of how severe the issue is. Is this a critical fix? Or is it something that is more on the back burner at the moment? And then what is your proposed solution? You could implement something in a table that looks something like, all right, where were they in the game with that feedback? They were at the first boss. What did they say as close to a quote as you can write down immediately? I didn't know what to do after the first boss. Where do I go? They keep saying things like, okay, now what? Because it's not clear how your game, what they should do from that point. Your game is not leading them to the next step, especially because it's early on enough that it's not straightforward. So the underlying issue at this point, not sure what the next step after the first boss fight is. It's been really directed. They've been in a tutorial up to this point. So this is the first time that they're required to act on their own without that level of guidance. So maybe, proposed solution, the mentor character who's been helping them through the tutorial could return after the boss, walk up and now give you a bit of a direction, hand you the second mission, and kind of tell you a direction to go off in for you to now go explore. Any questions on anything from these sections? All right, for those of us moving on to part 2, the iterative process this is going to look like. Just trying to tie this in as we're talking about it. You'll only have 4 weeks to develop a game, and then 1 week to review other people's games. Very short time period, very short time frame. Aim for 1 to 2 of these full cycles every week. And recognize that you're still not going to be fully happy with the final product after 4 weeks. You're going to have the best product that you could make within that time frame. But if you're spending 2 weeks or 4 weeks on this cycle, then you're going to end up with a product that hasn't been as fleshed out as you would like. Either it's stuck in the idea phase where there are a bunch of good ideas, but they haven't been fully fleshed out in the game, or it won't feel like a cohesive product. And just do note that the final products that you develop in here will feel more like game jam games than something that you would pay for. That doesn't mean that it can't get to that point, but that should be the expectation going in. It's my expectation going in, that you'll do the best that you can, but it's not expected that in 4 weeks you can produce something that would be worthy of spending money on. So you'll also keep this in mind when you are responsible for analyzing and reviewing other people's games. Just recognizing that they had the same constraints that you did will lead to being able to provide good feedback and not an expectation that they developed something that you would pay money for. All right, it's time to hop into today's activity. So we're going to do a brainstorming activity. Brainstorming in general, best way to have a good idea is to come up with a bunch of bad ideas and then throw them out. What remains is a pretty good idea. So one way to brainstorm, start with a theme and write it on a piece of paper. So you're going to need paper for this. If you don't have paper, ask someone around you if they can hand you a sheet of paper. If they're not willing to hand you a sheet of paper, offer more and more money until they hand you a sheet of paper.
At a certain point, you can just use them up.
Yeah. Yeah. It's going to be pretty small for what we're doing. It would be better if you had a sheet of paper. But, all right, so you're going to come up with a theme and you're going to write it on the middle of this piece of paper. It can be any theme that you want, really any idea.
Like a very general overarching.
Like, are we talking like a vibe mechanic?
Anything, literally anything.
Like a bubble. I do.
Oh, that's another vibe bit. Flavor off in already.
All right, and once you have that theme, we're going to begin something that is pretty rapid fire. Are we ready? You have a little bit more time to think of a theme. All right, you're going to write ideas connected to that. That is the first thing that come to mind. It doesn't have to be perfectly related or even particularly closely related. Just ideas that come to you that are related to that idea. Attach those, and then you can start expanding outward from there. Ideas that you get from those ideas, So an example of this would be something like this. We start with the Ouroboros, and from there, it looks kind of like a circle. Well, it looks kind of like a snake. I don't know how Red Dwarf came about, but that's something that came up to this person. Cycles, and just continue outwards, just whatever comes to mind. Just rapid fire until you have about 20 ideas on the page. Don't censor bad ideas, don't censor silly ideas. Just ideas that are related to what's on the page, in that order. Find yourself spending more than 10 seconds without writing down an idea, you're thinking too hard. Aim to have 20 ideas in the next minute or so. Might mean speeding up your process. No one's checking how related they actually are. Write down a last idea or two and we'll come together. Okay, are we ready? Next step is you're going to number your ideas. It does not matter how you number them. Just make sure that each idea that you have has a number associated with it.
Sequentially, so it's not like.
Yeah,
not
yeah,
a rate
1,
where-
2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay.
Start with 1.
Does the theme count as an idea?
Yes,
Where are we numbering them from? Like what we like or what?
doesn't matter. You can do it completely randomly, arbitrarily. Are we all numbered? Next step. Take out some kind of electronic device and Google RNG. You're gonna, as the maximum, put the number of ideas that you have, and you are going to generate 2 random numbers. Go ahead and put boxes around the circles of the 2 numbers that you generate. So the maximum should be the number of ideas that you had. You should have numbers from 1 to that maximum, so each number represents one of those ideas.
You say it again.
Yeah, you're generating 2 random numbers between 1 and the maximum number of ideas. You're gonna box on your page, put a square around the circles that are the idea numbers that come up. If you get 2 of the same number, roll it again. You need 2 distinct numbers. All right, we have that process done. We have 2 boxes around 2 of your ideas. All right. You're going to come up with 3 different game descriptions. This is about a 2-sentence to 1 paragraph description of a game that utilizes both of those ideas. And now you want three distinct ideas, three different game ideas. But each of those games should utilize the collision of these two ideas in some capacity. Yeah,
Is this like one sentence elevator pitch, or is it like?
kind of either like a two sentence to short paragraph description. So I should get a good sense from your description of what this game is slash does. Don't have anything technological, just what is the idea of the game? So here are some ideas that are more like one sentence descriptions, just to give you an idea of what this might look like. You don't have to go into much more detail than this, just to get a sense of how can you combine these ideas to make some kind of game idea. Try to make these as interesting as possible, because what we're going to be doing once you write these up is we're going to be anonymously posting these ideas on a discussion board for the class and voting on which games intrigue us. So make these interesting. Yeah,
If we're gonna have to type them anyways, can we just type them on?
yeah, you can just type them. And in fact, the discussion board is also live, so you could even go, so what I really want are different posts for different ideas. Don't throw all three ideas on the same post. For each idea, you want to make a distinct post.
Is it just gonna be on campus?
Yeah.
Can we specifically state whether it's like online or like paper game?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I would recommend for the sake of this class, let's try to, because this is going to be about video games, try to make some kind of game that could be digitized. Even if you design it in your head as a paper game, imagine it as a digital version of that game.
Just clarify one more time, you wanted 3 separate posts for the
Yeah,
ideas?
3 separate game ideas. Try to make them as distinct as possible from each other as well.
You want this turned
Different genres, different mechanics, etc. What was that?
Did you want this turned in today?
Yeah, I'm gonna talk about that. Just that, yeah.
And should each of the 3 have 2 separate regular?
They should be the same idea, the
Oh.
same 3 different game ideas
Okay.
for exactly that same pairing. You generated 20 ideas and only 2 of them are relevant to this. I will give you the rest of the class to think of this and work on it, but I'm gonna talk to you about how this is going to work from here. So pay attention because this will be necessary before tomorrow's class. So by 5 p.m. this afternoon, please have put these on the discussion board, just type them up and submit them. They don't have to be good or great or your best work ever. The posts are anonymous. So there will be no way to tie these ideas back to you. And then, so sometime after 5 p.m. tonight and before tomorrow's class, go through, read all of the ideas and choose your 10 favorite. And you're going to like those 10 posts. There are 21 people in here right now, which means there's going to be 63 ideas. So to give you a sense of what that looks like, you're going to be rating up about 1/6 of them. So your favorite 15, 16%. The ideas. And what we will be doing tomorrow is we're going to be looking at kind of the stats of these posts and trying to analyze why people did what they did with regards to this. So you will be able to see who's liked what in real time as that's happening. Try not to make that part of your decision-making process. Just because a game is popular doesn't mean you need to vote for it. Just because a game has no votes doesn't mean you have to vote for it. Try to think of the games that you would most like to play or you think would be the most interesting that you would want to see designed. Also, a layer of feasibility might go into that. If it's such a ridiculous idea that you can't see it working, maybe that's a reason to kind of tie break and not vote for it. So think feasibility would be fun, something I would enjoy, something that is so novel or so different that it would be fun to see how that would do. So with 10 more minutes, try to come up with a good 3 ideas. And if you have a little bit more time from that, go ahead and actually post them to Canvas.
So you want us to do 3 separate posts?
Yeah, 3 separate posts. Do not put them all together in one post. 3 separate posts, one with each of your ideas. And please do not rate before 5 p.m. just to give people a chance to, so that everyone can submit their ideas before you decide on those best, your favorites. And also, please don't rate your own.
I gotta boost my engagement somehow. How else would
Well,
I see my post see a 60?
That's why I make it anonymous. No one should care.
I don't know, so it's like. You should both.
That's great. That's good.
You can get that art exclusive. I can't even go, and it's like you did. Yeah, dude, that's fine too. It's like we have to do it in Moloch Stream, I never know the whole actors. What it's called, but it's stuck together, whatever. You can find them out on your stream together. Like that, that's supposed to be. So it's like. Yes, be careful. So I think that's like, it's really special for days. I think it was thinking of that. Everything that is just. Like a lot of them is on TV. No. Yeah.
One of out of my 2 like topics I got, one of them was so much like easier to work with. That's a
Yeah.
concept.
Yeah. You find that a lot in this. It actually is a real challenge to incorporate both of those ideas in a fun or interesting
Like,
way.
it'd be way easier if it was just one of these.
But it'd also be more boring, right?
Yeah,
You could come up with
I'd have
really
to come-
clever
I'd have to, like,
combinations.
on the spot come up with a second thing.
Yeah, yeah. It's fun.
I'm glad I numbered it the way I did because I know random numbers don't work like this, but it ended, you know, the way I numbered it, all the related things were close together.
Mhm.
And I know random numbers aren't gonna be like, oh, you know, I got a 20, now I need to get a 2.
Right.
Feels like that.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not, I got too completely unleashed.
Yeah, that's great. That makes for the best ideas, I find. What is the hybrid space between two very different ideas?
Yeah.
What's really fun is when you get opposites. That happened once last year. It was like, I got the exact antonym of the other idea. How do I? What?
It's kind of funny that they managed to get that from
Yeah,
what they started.
Do you know what Ethan came up with? Like, how did they deal with that?
come up with the ability to kind of revert from one to the other, or to change from what is the process of going from a word to an antonym? Like, play with the idea of an antonym and make that part of your game.
Yes. Like flashing ideals can be a very easy starting point for a story, stuff like that.
Yeah, but is that perfect?
People are starting to head out of here and I have a bus to catch, so probably should as well. Just to make it so I don't need to run towards it.
Yeah. Last piece of information people will need to know, I want to prime you with what our discussion is going to be at the start of next class. So within an hour or two before tomorrow's class, once we've all had a chance to rate, assuming that we don't forget and we don't have people spamming likes right before class tomorrow, please try not to be that person. But take a look at the results and think about what similarities exist between the ideas that were the most popular. Why are the popular ideas the most popular? Think about how could those ideas be improved? And then what would you need to be able to take this idea and start making a game out of that idea? But just kind of collecting stats on why are the popular ideas popular? Why are the unpopular ideas unpopular?
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry, I'm in my own head. When did you say you were taking or like looking at the amount of likes of a thing you have?
Yeah, like an hour or two before class tomorrow. So by 5 p.m. have the posts. Between 5 p.m. and tomorrow morning, do the likes. And then an hour or two before class, take a look at the results and be ready to discuss why we see the results that we see.
Okay, we can see the likes on them?
Yes,
Okay.
you should be able to see the likes. Yeah.
I would say don't.
2 sentences to a small paragraph. Something like that, just enough to get an idea of the game without having to go into the details of exactly how that is. It's an idea, it's not necessarily a fully fleshed out idea.
Like,
Interesting.
Like phase. Word based something new.
Like the same, instead of saying like a type of the same customer. Right. Like, they have to order them over and over again. So that's happy changing how likely it would be the beverage car.
Yeah, I feel like it's all like settings, different.
Whoever came up with that just needs to know the thing. I would be so much joy.
What was the idea?
So I need to pull this up. I think this is, this is going to be first life that I get once everything's Fox Bar. A game that you give birth to and raise an explosive barrel with a spaceship. If you fail to care for the barrel, it will explode, sucking everyone into space. No. It's so good.
That
You need this in my life.